I was house-sitting for my grandma one weekend while she went on a trip to Florida with some of her church friends. She lived in a quiet neighborhood, and I was staying in the guest bedroom next to hers. That room always had 2 twin beds. My brother and I used to sleep there during childhood sleepovers. I chose the bed by the window, but before settling in, I made sure all the doors were locked. I wasn't tired yet, so I spent about an hour on my phone, watching videos, texting, just killing time. That's when I heard something strange. A voice, a woman's voice outside. It was faint at first, just a soft, "Hello." I paused, unsure if I was imagining it. Then, a few seconds later, I heard it again. "Hello." Curious, I got out of bed and slowly walked toward the front of the house, moving carefully to hear better. The voice kept repeating the same word every few seconds. It was coming from the front porch. My grandma's door didn't have a peephole, but the dining room windows gave a clear view outside. I crept to the window and carefully peeked through the blinds, trying not to make it obvious. But the second I did, my heart nearly stopped. There on the porch stood an older woman. Her eyes locked directly onto mine, as if she'd been waiting for me to look. Her lips curled into a freakish smile. "Hello," she said again. She looked to be in her late 50s or early 60s, but there was something off about her. She didn't have the harmless, grandmotherly appearance you might expect. Her expression was unnatural. Her smile stretched too wide. A deep chill settled over me. I stepped away from the window. Maybe she was a friend of my grandma's. But why would she be here at midnight, not knocking or ringing the doorbell? Just standing there, repeating the same word over and over. The whole thing sent a shiver through me. I hurried back to the guest bedroom and shut the door, trying to convince myself she'd leave. And for a while, everything was quiet. Maybe she was gone. I texted my sisters and some friends about it, telling them how weird it was. They all told me to call my grandma, but I knew she wouldn't answer. She never checked her phone that late. Just as I was starting to calm down, bang. Not a tap, not a knock. A full-force bang against the window. My body froze. A sickening jolt of adrenaline shot through me as my heart pounded in my chest. Then, from outside, "Hello," the same voice. But this time, it was right there, at my window. Without thinking, I yanked up the blinds and found myself staring directly into the woman's face. Only a thin pane of glass separated us. Her smile hadn't faded. It was unnatural, eerie. I shouted at her, "I'm calling the cops." Her grin didn't waver. I dropped the blinds and sprinted out of the room, my pulse hammering. I ran upstairs and locked myself in the guest bedroom there, forcing myself under the covers. I didn't actually call the police. I don't know why. I just wanted it to be over. Hours passed. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to go back downstairs. I checked the windows. The woman was gone. The next morning, I called my grandma and told her everything. Her reaction made my stomach drop. She started panicking, nearly yelling into the phone. A few days earlier, she told me, she'd been at the grocery store when a strange woman, about 10 years younger than her, kept following her, smiling at her for no reason. I told her to calm down. Maybe it wasn't the same woman. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But after we hung up, I sat there thinking. My grandma is 75. She's still sharp, but sometimes she exaggerates things. Still, the fear in her voice, the way she described that woman, could it really have been the same person? And if so, what did she want? My name is Nicholas, and I'm a freshman at Syracuse University. The campus itself is nice, but the surrounding area, not exactly the safest place. I had just gone through my first breakup and decided to get back into online dating. I was using Hinge when I matched with a blonde girl named Stephanie. She also went to Syracuse, and we clicked instantly. We had similar interests, reading, movies, and even the same sense of humor. After talking for a bit, I suggested we see a movie together. She loved the idea and told me to meet her at a specific location near campus where she'd pick me up. That night, around 9 p.m., I stood on a quiet neighborhood corner, waiting for her. She had asked me to share my location, so I did. A few minutes later, a car approached and stopped right in front of me. Only, it wasn't Stephanie behind the wheel. Instead, an older man rolled down the window and asked why I was standing there alone. His tone was strange, like he already knew the answer. I told him I was waiting for someone. "Stephanie?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yeah, how do you know that?" He gave me a casual shrug. "I'm her father. She asked me to pick you up." Something immediately felt off. He looked way too old to be her dad. And why hadn't she mentioned this before? I kept my voice firm. "Why didn't she tell me you'd be picking me up?" He sighed and said he didn't trust a random guy meeting his daughter alone. so he wanted to meet me first. I didn't buy it. I took another good look at him, then turned and started walking in the opposite direction. "Hey, hey!" he called after me, sounding surprised that I wasn't just getting in his car. I ignored him and kept moving. I've read enough horror stories to know how these situations end. I heard his car start moving and quickly turned to check if he was doing a U-turn to follow me. My chest tightened for a second, but then I saw him drive straight and take a left out of sight. Relieved, I kept walking toward campus, but as I reached the next block, I noticed a familiar-looking car parked on the side of the road, its lights off. I tried to stay calm as I passed by. The windows were tinted so I couldn't see inside. I acted like I didn't notice and kept walking. Then my phone vibrated. It was a text from Stephanie. "Why didn't you get in the car with my dad?" I didn't respond. At the next intersection, I turned right, and then I ran. Full speed, straight toward campus. I wasn't followed, or at least, I thought I wasn't. As I finally slowed down near my dorm, my paranoia started creeping in. I felt like I was being watched. Then, just as I was convincing myself it was all in my head, crunch. The sound of glass breaking under a shoe. Someone was behind me. I ducked behind a parked van, heart pounding, and listened. The footsteps were close, just a few cars away. That's when I remembered something that made my stomach drop. I had never stopped sharing my location. I peeked around the van and my blood ran cold. It was him, the old man from the car, creeping toward me between two parked vehicles. His eyes locked onto mine. "Come back," he called out. "I'll take you to her." My adrenaline kicked in. He was too old to catch me if I ran. I bolted. I didn't stop until I was inside my dorm. The door locked behind me. My roommate wasn't home, so I had no one to tell. I sat on my bed trying to process everything. Then my phone vibrated again, another text from Stephanie. Only this time the message was chilling. "You're lucky you got away. I would have strangled you, you little piece of shit." I stared at the screen, stomach twisting. I took a screenshot and replied, "Thanks for the threat, it's going straight to the police." Then I blocked the number. I still have the conversation saved as evidence. One day, I plan to turn it in. Hopefully, the police can do something about it, because whoever that man was, he was out there, looking for his next victim. When I was 18, I worked a summer job as a part-time janitor at my old high school. The shifts varied, sometimes mornings, sometimes late nights, depending on how much cash I needed. A lot of the time, I was left alone to lock up after the senior janitors left. This was before the school had cameras in every hallway, so I had a lot of freedom. One night, my supervisor, Tom, had to leave early, meaning I'd be finishing the shift alone. As usual, he told me to text him if I needed anything before heading out. Honestly, I loved working solo. It meant I could slack off, half an hour of actual work, then just scrolling on my phone or even sneaking out early while still getting paid. That night, Tom had one last task for me: haul the extra chairs from the gym's recent assembly down to the basement storage. Simple enough. I grabbed a stack of 6 chairs and made my way downstairs. Now, the basement of that school, it was unsettling. The lighting was dim, casting weird shadows everywhere. It looked less like a school storage space and more like some abandoned warehouse. There were rows of covered objects, mostly art mannequins draped in old paint-stained cloths. This was where the school kept its art department's extra supplies. I set down the chairs where the others were stacked and went back up for another load. When I returned, something was different. One of the mannequins was uncovered. I froze. I knew for a fact it had been covered just minutes earlier. It was one of the ones near the front. My stomach twisted as I scanned the basement, but nothing seemed out of place, except for that mannequin. I pulled out my phone and texted Tom. Me, "I think someone's down in the basement." Tom, "What do you mean?" Me, "One of the art cloths is moved." I didn't touch it. A minute passed before he responded. Tom, "No one else should be there." As I read his text, something caught my eye. In the farthest corner of the storage room, tucked just outside the dim light, was a crumpled art cloth on the floor. It was covering something, and that something moved. A slight, almost imperceptible shift, but I saw it. Someone was hiding under there. I didn't wait to find out who. I turned and bolted up the stairs, locking the basement door behind me. My hands were shaking as I texted Tom again. Me, "Someone is hiding under a cloth in the basement." Tom, "Call the cops." Me, "Dude, just come back. You only left 10 minutes ago." I expected him to say he was on his way. Instead, I got, "Tom, be a man and go check it out." I stared at my phone, half expecting him to say he was joking. He wasn't. Against every survival instinct in my body, I unlocked the basement door and stepped back inside. The cloth was still on the floor, but whatever had been under it, gone. A cold chill ran down my spine. I scanned the room, expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, but the basement was silent. Then, bang! A loud metallic thud echoed from above me. I looked up at the air vents lining the ceiling. Something was inside them. I watched, heart hammering, as dents formed in the metal, one after another moving toward me. Whoever was up there had stopped directly above me. Then the banging started again, harder this time, like they were trying to break through. That was it. I ran, full speed, up the stairs, out the door, and locked up the school in record time. I barely slept that night. The next day, I told Tom a half-truth that I thought I saw something moving, but when I checked again, it was gone. He laughed it off. I never told him about the vents, and honestly, I don't want to know who or what was down there that night, because one thing's for sure, they weren't just hiding, they were trying to get out.